Yud. Yosef hears that his father is sick, the word sick, choleh. And as I'd mentioned, the Gemara, Yaakov Avinu was the first one in the history of the world to become ill, not well. Why did Yaakov become sick? We said Avraham Avinu was the first human being to age. There's no mention of aging in the Torah. The first time mentioned, it's mentioned by Avraham Avinu. After Sarah Imenu passes away, and he has to seek out a wife for Yitzchak, he summons Eliezer, and it says when Avram was Zoki Bo Bayomim, he was old, because over there, the Midrash says, the Gemara says, because Avram and Yitzchak look identically. They had identical features, and people would confuse Yitzchak to be Avram and Avram to be Yitzchak. And it was important to discern between the two of them, who Avram was and who Yitzchak was. As a result of that, Hashem introduced aging. Avram aged, and therefore they're able to discern between Avram and Yitzchak. Why was it important to introduce at this moment illness, sickness in the world? And Yosef, when he heard his father was sick, he knew immediately it's because he's nearing his end. Illness means death is not too far off. So the Gemara tells us, because it's important before a person dies, he puts his house in order, his financial affairs in order, many other things in order. But if a person suddenly dies and that doesn't realize that he's close to dying, he may not act responsibly or take care of certain things, and things are not taken care of after he passes away suddenly. Yaakov had to set things straight and identify and put things in place before he passed away. Why? Because he realized he's close, he's dying. Illness is an indication. Now he has to bless his children. And the value of Yaakov's brachos to his children was he identified each one's strengths, characteristics, and as a result of him blessing them, that created and set the dynamic in reality that those characteristics and those potentials will actually come to fruition and be actualized. That was the value of Yaakov's brachos, the blessings to each one of his sons, as he articulated to every one of them. So illness was introduced now because it was crucial that Yaakov should give the brachos to his family before he passes away. Ephraim and Manasseh only were designated as tribes, although they were grandchildren of Yaakov. They were the only grandchildren of Yaakov who assumed the status of tribes. Ephraim and Manasseh, Reuven and Shimon only. Ephraim and Manasseh will be no different than Reuven and Shimon in terms of the number of tribes. Therefore, it was important, if Yaakov wouldn't have done this at this moment, they would have been grandchildren, they wouldn't have had the status of tribes. So every aspect of Yaakov's words at this moment, identifying and designating whatever that designation was set in place for all eternity, and whatever they were meant to be and to function in that capacity, vis-a-vis the whole, it was due to what Yaakov had said at this moment. Therefore, Yaakov Choleh, when Yosef heard his father was sick, he knew immediately that this is a clear indication that he's not too far off from dying. He says, I better take my children with me to receive their blessing. So it's interesting. Why does the world exist? Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. What is the objective of creation? For the sake of Torah, which is Reshis, and the only people who have relevance to that Torah are the Jewish people. Otherwise, the world has no value whatsoever. If Klal Yisrael would not be able to function in that capacity as a spiritual people, the Torah really doesn't have much relevance to them. Yaakov's designating each one of them in their own capacity and give the bracha, allow them to actualize that potential. That means they'll be able to process the Torah as a Jewish people to be able to meet the objective of creation at Sinai and to go forth until the end of time. Because you would say, why is the illness in the world? Because Yaakov had to bless his children, therefore there's illness. But if not for Yaakov, you close down all the hospitals. The hospitals would have never been opened. So the only reason why there's illness and the sickness is only because Yaakov had to become ill, because otherwise he wouldn't have been able or been aware to do what he had to do in terms of giving the brachos. So that the world from then going forward suffers from illness is due to the Jewish people. Right? According to what the Gemara is saying. But the answer is very simple. If not for the Jewish people, there would not be in existence. The illness had to be brought upon Yaakov because Yaakov had to actualize every one of the potentials of every one of his children to establish them as a Klal Yisrael. B'Shril Yisrael Nikarashis. The world was created for Yisrael, who are called Rashis, the chosen, but the only chosen because they were the children of Yaakov, and Yaakov blessed them to be able to actualize that potential of every one of them, and in the totality, they are the Klal Yisrael. So therefore, that was a prerequisite to existence. You had to have illness at this point. So nobody could say. There's an Orach Chaim HaKadosh who says, in regard to Pinchas was the zealot. He killed Zimri. So it says, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. So the question is, Rashi explains, why do we have to trace the pedigree of Pinchas back to Aaron? Just say Pinchas ben Elazar. Why Aaron? So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh over there offers an explanation of something phenomenal. Now, why was there the Chet Egel? Because the Jews believed that Moshe was no longer alive. But Aaron participated. He told him to gather the gold and so on and so forth. It was his level, he had some level of participation. And as a result of that, the luchos were broken. And as a result of that, there was a plague. Those who worshipped the golden calf were killed, so on and so forth. So there was a claim against Aaron. Aaron, if you would have participated, maybe you would have dealt with it differently. Maybe all that followed wouldn't have happened. And everybody has what to say. So the Torah says, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. You're claiming that the reason why that death was introduced into existence, because before the Chet Egel, we were not subject to death, and many other things happened as a result of that. But if not, so Aaron is at fault. But you realize, if not for Aaron, there wouldn't have been a Pinchas. And if there wouldn't have been a Pinchas, it wouldn't be a Jewish people. Because if not for the zealotry of Pinchas, the wrath of God would have destroyed the Jewish people. So therefore, the Torah traces Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, that the pedigree of Pinchas is Aaron, to understand who Aaron is. Therefore, anybody has any claim, that will silence that claim, because if not for Aaron, there wouldn't be a Pinchas, and if there wouldn't be a Pinchas, there wouldn't be a Jewish people. So the same idea. If there wouldn't be illness, there would not be a Jewish people. If there would not be a Jewish people, there wouldn't be an existence, because only Klal Yisrael, as Bnei Yisrael, who received the blessings from their father, that they function that capacity, do they have relevance to the Torah itself.
Can I ask something, Rabbi?
Yes.
Why?